Lean on us.
We are here for you.
You matter.
You are not alone.
Are you feeling overwhelmed? Not sure where to turn? The National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is there for you 24/7. Call or text 988 or chat at 988sc.org. Whether you're having an emergency or you know someone who needs support now, they can help you take the next step towards finding hope and healing.
There is hope. 988sc.org.
We get our weekly groceries delivered through Instacart because once football season starts, game time is family time. I can get everything my family needs for the week, from reliable staples to specialty ingredients, all delivered right to my door in as fast as 1 hour. So I can stay on my game without missing a minute of the game. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Instacart. Add life to cart.
It hurts sometimes more than we can bear. If we could live without passion, maybe we'd know some kind of peace. But we would be hollow. Empty rooms, shuttered and dank. Without passion, we'd be truly dead.
In my years as watcher, I've buried too many people. Jenny was the first I loved.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't kill him for you. For her. When I had the chance. I wasn't ready. But I think I finally am.
Hi. Principal Snyder asked me to fill in for Miss Calendar until the new computer science teacher arrives. So I'm just gonna stick to the lesson plan she left.
I can't hold on to the past anymore. Angel is gone. Nothing's ever gonna bring him back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Still Slaying, a Buffyverse podcast. I'm Penny.
And I'm Kara. This episode, we're going to be discussing Season 2, Episode 17, Passion, directed by Michael Gershman and written by Ty King, Rob Deshotel, Dean Batali, and Marty Noxon. The original air date was February 24th, 1998, so 2 weeks after our last episode that we covered.
And let's go back to that date, February 24th, 1998.
Aww.
It was an interesting time. The number one song in the U.S. was My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. I have a feeling that's going to be number one for a while. Mm-hmm. In the U.K., the number one song was Dr. Jones by Aqua. At the box office, Titanic, still number one.
Going strong.
And then I looked up, what was on TV opposite Buffy that night, and it was a lot of sitcoms, so they were half-hour shows. Home Improvement, Soul Man, which was a sitcom spin-off of the Oh My God, So Racist movie. I don't think that show lasted very long.
No, that unlocked a memory right there. That's for sure.
Jag,
Aww.
Mad About You and News Radio, Moesha and Clueless, and this is my favorite one. On Fox, there was something called Daredevils Live, Shattering the Records. And it was live stunts like motorcycle jumping and car racing and car jumping. And it featured Robbie Knievel, who is the son of Evel Knievel. And when I was a kid in the 70s, Evel Knievel was huge. And there was like an Evel Knievel toy that he was on a motorcycle and you could like pull it back and it would go really fast. And if you had a ramp, it would jump stuff. It was so cool. And the ad for it was on Saturday morning cartoons like constantly. And we begged and begged and begged and begged and begged my parents to get one, and they never did. But I did have a school friend who had one, so I did get to play with it one time.
Nice.
I watched a little bit of Daredevil's Live. The entire hour is on YouTube, so I'll put that link in the show notes.
I feel like I vaguely remember this.
I mean,
commercials,
it was probably a big deal. Yeah.
Because if I wasn't watching Buffy, I was probably watching Moesha or Clueless.
The stock market at the time, Apple stock was trading at $21.31.
Dang.
For comparison, they were trading yesterday at $176.
Whew.
And Microsoft was trading at $83.37, and yesterday they were trading at $3.53. General Electric was trading at $77, and yesterday they were at $109, so not as big of a difference. And IBM was trading at $102, and yesterday they were at $148.
Dang.
The change in Apple and Microsoft stock is unbelievable. I wish
wild.
I could go back and buy some.
Yeah. Instead of, what is it, in Back to the Future Part 2, when, Biff has that sports almanac.
Yeah, and he makes his fortune betting on sports.
Yeah, just go back in time and buy Apple and Microsoft stock and you're good to go. What else was going on during that time? It's a pretty wide range of events. Elton John becomes Sir Elton John when he is knighted. And the grand jury in the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal were hearing testimony. Now that I definitely remember being on the news all the time. Cuba responds to the Pope's appeal on February 12th. Havana announces that it will free more than 200 prisoners held on political and other charges in answer to an appeal by John Paul II during his January trip to Cuba. Sinn Féin was expelled from peace talks. That was in February 20th. Irish and British governments take temporary measures against the political wing of the Irish Republican Army. This seems kind of around the time of, what is it? That comedy show on Netflix, Dairy Girls. Have you watched that?
Oh, I haven't. It takes place in the 90s?
Mm-hmm. It's really, really interesting. It's funny, but on top of that, there's a lot of interesting, political stuff going on in the background. And then on February 24th, executive privilege was reportedly invoked by Clinton. Lawyers say the president seeks to shield his top assistants from testifying before the grand jury about White House discussions on the Monica Lewinsky inquiry. That's a fun one.
That was a big scandal.
Oh, goodness. I can still remember sitting around the breakfast table and my parents talking about that. Then, unfortunately, February 23rd, Florida tornadoes killed at least 38 people, and it spread wide devastation across the central area of the state of Florida.
So, given, whoever you might have been at the time, one of these items was probably on your mind when you sat down to watch Buffy that night.
Selling your car to Carvana is as easy as...
As easy as pie?
Sure. All you have to do is enter your license plate or VIN.
As easy as a stroll in the park.
Okay, then just answer a few questions and you'll get a real offer in seconds.
As easy as singing.
Why not? Schedule a pickup or drop off and Carvana will pay you that amount right on the spot.
As easy as playing guitar.
Actually, I find that kind of difficult. But selling your car to Carvana is as easy as...
Can be.
Visit Carvana.com or download the app to get an instant offer today.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I got in touch with Kara ahead of time and said, obviously we're going to be talking about stalking because this is an episode that is all about stalking. And with her background as a prosecutor, I was like, this is an opportunity that we won't get a lot, right? Where your background
Very
is
true.
Very relevant to the story. I did want to throw out a little trigger warning. The conversation about stalking is probably going to include, rape culture, violence against women, domestic violence, violence against animals. There's a lot of aspects to this. If it's too much for you, I will put in a chapter heading that's after the big stalking discussion, so you can just skip it and listen to the rest of the episode.
I think that'll be helpful. But it really is impossible to watch this episode without thinking of domestic violence and stalking.
Right up until the point where there's supernatural stuff involved, all of Angel's behavior is incredibly realistic. I wanted to play this scene between Angel and Joyce to start us off.
Summers, I need to talk to you.
You're Angel.
Did Buffy tell you about us?
She told me she wants you to leave her alone.
I can't do that.
You're scaring her.
You have to help me. Joyce, I need to be with her. You can convince her. You have to convince her.
Look, I'm telling you to leave her alone.
You have to talk to her for me, Joyce. Tell her I need her.
Please, look, I just want to get inside, okay?
You don't understand, Joyce. I'll die without Buffy. She'll die without me.
Are you threatening her?
Please. Why is she doing this to me?
I'm calling the police now.
I haven't been able to sleep since the night we made love. I need her. I know you understand.
Just leave us alone.
His verbis consensus recissus est.
Sorry, Angel. Change the locks.
Angel is exhibiting a lot of classic stalker behavior. He does a lot of watching, following, monitoring of Buffy and her friends. There are overt threats. There are threatening gifts and messages, just unwanted intrusion into her life, harassing and threatening the people in her life, killing pets, causing trouble with her mother, sneaking into her bedroom at night. And I just put, hello, Edward in Twilight.
Right?
That's not okay.
That could be like a whole point. I was like, stop romanticizing sneaking into people's houses and watching them sleep.
It's not cute. It's not sweet. It's not romantic. It's scary.
It's very problematic.
His obsession is so intense that he's willing to go against his own best interest, right? Stalking and tormenting her is more important to him than his relationships with other vampires, than his own safety. He doesn't mind her getting angry. He's okay with risking that. Even though he's super confident, he should know that she's, a formidable opponent. And, Spike is like, you're just going to make her mad? Like, what are you doing, man?
Oh, yeah.
And stalking is horrible for the person being stalked. But it's not a cakewalk for the stalker either. It's a serious psychological problem, that kind of obsession that would lead someone to do that.
Yeah, like this compulsive behavior at times.
Angelus is so good at acting like a human. That scene with Joyce, he looks sad and vulnerable and worried, and Joyce is scared of him, but not as scared as she really should be of him.
Right.
She's like, I'm going to call the police. He's so good at it. He's so good looking, and he knows it, and he uses it. So freaking scary.
I think that's what is the most disturbing about Angelus's behavior is how intentional and calculated everything is. Every single thing that he does is well thought out and part of his plan to, torment and torture Buffy. And I think, this is another example of the show doing what it does best, is tackling real life themes and issues with this supernatural lens. But Angelus, the reason his storyline is probably the one that sticks with me the most as being the most disturbing out of all of the quote unquote big bads is because of how real it is. And I think a lot of times today, I think it's gotten a little bit better, but people still seem to think of strangers when it comes to stalkers. Someone being infatuated with a celebrity they don't know, or seeing someone out in public and making up a relationship and starting to follow that person. But statistically speaking, that's a teeny tiny minuscule amount of stalking cases.
Right. It's mostly people who have some kind of relationship with the person they're stalking, but it's usually not the relationship they want, right? They're either jilted lovers or jilted suitors, they never were lovers, or a family member.
You know them somehow.
And that's one of the things that makes it so difficult to enforce, even though there are stalking laws as of the early 90s, and I have some data on that. It's very, very hard to make a case or prove a case, especially before there was education on the topic, because police officers were literally trained that domestic violence and stalking was a private matter, and that the most the police should do is like cool down an incident and then leave those people alone. And because there is such a high incidence of domestic violence by police officers, and there's a culture of police officers protecting each other no matter what, it's incredibly hard to get any kind of relief from a cop who is an abuser or a stalker, because you won't be believed, you won't be taken seriously, and it's something that the media likes to glamorize too, right? Like you were saying, like Twilight, he's a total stalker and it's creepy and awful. The term stalker was initially only used to refer to, like what you were saying, like celebrity stalkers. And there was a really famous case that happened in 1989 where a stalker murdered Rebecca Schaefer, a young actor who was at the beginning of, a promising career. She was in a sitcom with Pam Dauber, Mindy from Mork and Mindy, and it was pretty good. I watched it. And then over time after that, that was when stalking sort of like jumped into the headlines, and that was the first time I ever heard of it.
Yeah.
And then it started to be used to refer to like former partners and things like that. There were a lot of stalker movies in the 90s. I Know What You Did Last Summer, another Sarah Michelle Gellar pick. Poison Ivy in 1994, Cable Guy 1996, Cape Fear.
Oh, Cape Fear scared the hell out of me.
Sleeping with the Enemy, which I've seen like 25 times. Such a creepy movie. Single White Female 92, The Crush 93, Misery, The Bodyguard 1992, and I cannot stress this enough, so many Lifetime movies. Lifetime movies in the 90s were these sort of sensationalized, like women's issue movies, and there were tons of them about stalkers stalking pretty girls. It was almost always like a really, really pretty victim and a pretty handsome stalker. When women are the victim, they're always super sexual. Except for Kathy Bates in Misery. But like they're usually young and really hot and really sexy. And it's a little bit portrayed like the guy is into it. When men are stalkers in movies, they're allowed to be gross and creepy, like De Niro was in Cape Fear. Probably the two like best known stalker movies were not from the 90s, but Fatal Attraction in 87, the infamous Bunny Boiling movie,
classic,
and Swim Fan in 2002.
I really like that movie. I remember that one.
That's an intense one.
Erica Christensen does such a great job.
Yeah, those are fantastic, really gripping movies, but there is a sort of glamorization, sensationalization of stalking. And I mean, I get it. They're making movies. They want them to be sexy. It's why I love, like, Sleeping with the Enemy. You have no sympathy for the stalker. He is not made to look good by the end of the movie. And it was on everyone's minds at the time. And the first stalking legislation, California was the first state to criminalize stalking in the U.S. in 1990. And then within 3 years, all the rest of the United States followed with some kind of anti-stalking law. And then the Violence Against Women Act was passed in 1994. This created sweeping changes to the way that law enforcement and social services would approach cases that were about violence against women, because historically, crimes against women are dramatically underreported and underenforced. There are a lot of cases where people think, like, they legitimately, completely, publicly say, like, oh, that's between the husband and wife, I shouldn't get involved. Or that's between, the parents and their kids, I shouldn't get involved, when it's horrible, abusive situations going on. So the Violence Against Women Act was starting to address those things. My favorite part of it is that it didn't just have to do with crime and investigations and punishment, but also social services, funding for organizations that provide shelter for somebody who's being stalked, counseling at local levels, with a focus on services that were directed towards people who didn't speak English, Native Americans, because the incidences on tribal reservations are just off the charts, and immigrants and undocumented residents. There's a lot of scandal and debate around the Violence Against Women Act. It's opposed on the grounds that some people don't want it extended to same-sex couples. Some people don't want it even extended to non-married couples. Some people don't want it extended to male victims. But the biggest thing that's opposed is the red flag law, where people who have been accused of stalking or domestic violence can't buy a gun. That is very, very strongly opposed by the right.
That's something that always just really gets under my skin with, at least in Texas, when you have been not even convicted, if you are placed on a deferred adjudication and ultimately, you don't have a conviction on your record for even a Class C assault family violence case, you cannot own a gun for 5 years.
What does Class C mean?
So Class C, in terms of, the hierarchy of laws in Texas, is pretty much the lowest level crime you could be convicted of. It's the equivalent of a speeding ticket. Okay. Or, public intoxication is a Class C in Texas. So something that you can't even be jailed for, you can still have your gun taken away if it is an assault family violence offense. And same thing goes, up the line if it's a little bit higher, a Class A misdemeanor, which is our highest level misdemeanor crime. It's punishable by up to a year in jail or a $4,000 fine, or, you could be put on probation. If you get any sort of deferred adjudication, community supervision, or jail time for an assault family violence offense of that level, same thing, your guns are gone. And I can't express how important that is to people that don't deal with assault family violence, domestic violence, any sort of interrelationship violence, is how likely you're going to be killed by your partner as opposed to a stranger. Every murder case, I think, except one that I was a part of, was person killing ex romantic partner. And in some situations, it's that stalking behavior. I had a capital murder case that was the last one I dealt with before I left, where for years after they broke up, he would show up in her house when she would return from work. He would send text messages of her car parked outside, a restaurant or a bar. He took one of her kittens one time and she never saw the kitten again. He left the collar on her, porch, and just this escalating behavior over time that is a huge red flag for anybody that's familiar with domestic violence situations and the warning signs. And her family, like, I will never forget them coming in my office and being so frustrated that the police hadn't been able to do anything, that they had tried and reported his behavior over and over again, and ultimately he ended up killing her. And so whenever I hear people bring up Second Amendment rights when it comes to domestic violence convictions or people who have been accused, it's like, I don't care. Like, I really, really could not care less, because
the statistics are staggering.
They really are.
That women who report this kind of behavior are not making it up. The number of cases that are false accusations is incredibly statistically small.
Mm-hmm.
That the behavior always escalates over time unless something happens to the stalker. Doing something to your pet is so commonly a part of stalking that there is a federal law called the Pause Act that was passed in 2018 that basically says it's also stalking if your conduct causes somebody to have a reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury to his or her pet. It's a huge part of it is killing pets. I mean, it happens in all these movies, right? And we saw Angel did it with the fish, and apparently at one point with somebody's puppy. That
was so
Buffy didn't want to hear about.
Skip it. Skip it.
It was funny when Drusilla is carrying around that little fluffy puppy.
Sunshine
episode. Yes, she's such a crazy person.
I
just was like, oh, Angel might nail that to a door. Like, don't. Oh, but of course Drusilla would enjoy that.
Yeah. At this point, because let's not forget how Drusilla got to be this way.
Yeah, I mean, Angel did all this stalking crap to her and then turned her into a vampire. It's unclear if he also plans to turn Buffy, if his torment goes the way he wants it to go. I mean, why wouldn't he? He'd probably really enjoy that.
Also, there was one thing that I wanted to mention before I forgot about it, that I feel like, people are used to the term stalking. We hear that all the time. But one thing I did want to bring up is the notion of coercive control. And, it's related to stalking and intimate partner violence. And for, listeners who may not be entirely familiar, it's basically a strategic form of ongoing, I think the CDC described it as ongoing oppression and terrorism that an abuser will use to instill fear in their target, their partner. And they'll use different tactics like limiting access to money, monitoring your communication, monitoring what you wear, isolating you from friends and family and any support system that you have, slowly denying you freedom and autonomy. And it happens over time. And one thing that the United States is a bit behind on is making coercive control illegal and actionable as a criminal offense. The United Kingdom, since 2015, has been prosecuting it as a crime, but you don't really see it come up in the United States as much unless it's a discussion about, behavior that led to a crime that somebody was ultimately arrested for. And, I know we are talking a lot about stalking, but just wanted to reiterate how much we see of it in this episode. So the CDC website, which I have, the link that we can put in our show notes, which is a good resource for people who either want to know more about stalking, are involved in a situation that they want help with. There's a list of tactics which include unwanted following and watching of the victim. So we've got that down pat with Angel. Unwanted approaching or showing up in places such as the victim's home, workplace, or school.
Yep, definitely Angel.
Like unwanted use of a global positioning system. We don't have GPS. Angel's
In fact,
really
Angel
old.
doesn't really understand how computers work
No,
either.
so he doesn't have that. But leaving strange or potentially threatening items for the victim to find. That drawing, which was an impeccable drawing, to be fair, was absolutely terrifying for Buffy to wake up to. Sneaking into the victim's home or car and doing things to scare the victim, let the victim know the perpetrator has been there. Unwanted phone calls, unwanted texts, emails, social media, photo messages, unwanted cards, letters, flowers, or presents. We saw the roses and the, ominous note that said soon. It's basically like the writers were reading a textbook on stalking and having Angel carry out all of these things. And while it's a very compelling storyline and TV arc, I think it's important to recognize how much of these behaviors pop up in real life and how many things have been minimized or romanticized these days. Like something always bugged me with The Notebook. And I think
I actually never saw that movie, but I understand that it's somebody follows the girl he loves like for many, many years until she finally relents and loves him back.
Essentially, and to get her to agree, just to give you an idea, to go on the first date with him, she's on a date with somebody else. They're on a Ferris wheel. He climbs up it and is hanging off of the Ferris wheel, acting like he's going to let go until she agrees to go out with him.
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
played off as this like cute, funny, like look at how persistent he is. And I'm just like, no.
Threatening to
that's
harm
kinda...
yourself unless somebody dates you and interrupting their date to make this big grand gesture, that is huge red flags.
It's a lot. And, thinking of Angel stringing together poor Willow's fish and leaving them for her to find. And, this is basically the writers also telling all of us, like, by the way, he's a real threat. And I think there's a JW quote about this episode. Like, Angel's not just a little evil. He's
He's big evil.
Like, he is actually an evil person. And we see that loud and clear in this episode. And it's just the intensity, I think, sometimes draws your attention, obviously into the episode because it's good TV. But every time I watch it now, I think of some case that I dealt with, and it hits so much harder. And I'm just like, people need to care about stalking.
And understand that it's not cute. It's not just some unwanted, phone calls. And now with cyber stalking, I mean, it's not really relevant to the show to talk about that, but there's just whole new levels of the ways that people can be tormented by someone who wants to torment them, and in a way that's hard to prove or hard to enforce, because a lot of the stalking behaviors, outside of a pattern, are completely legal. Sending someone an email, legal. Seeing somebody, like going to someone's house and knocking on their door, legal. Like all these things are legal. It's the pattern that makes it illegal and the effect on the other person. I've had a couple of stalkers in my life.
It's
unsettling.
I had one
in college. This guy would just like leave photographs of me in my dorm room.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd be like, where did you take this? And then for a while after college, there was this guy in my neighborhood who would like wait for me in the morning and like walk me to my bus stop and chat with me until I got on the bus. He worked nights, so we had sort of an opposite schedule. And then when I would come home at night, a lot of times he'd be waiting at the bus stop and he'd walk me home. And this part was kind of a perk. Whenever it snowed, he would clean off my car. And I was always like, at least he's helpful.
It's like, if you're gonna stalk me, at least be
a little bit helpful. It was really funny because I went to law school and I left town for 3 years and I moved back to that same neighborhood because I love that neighborhood, the Fenway in Boston. And my little sister was living with me for the summer. And she came home one day and she's like, there's this weird guy who keeps like following me around and like waiting for me when I get off the bus. And I was like, huh, what does he look like? And she described him. And I was like, what's his name? Did he tell you his name? And she said his name. And I was like, that guy stalked me 3 years ago.
That is so creepy.
A friend of mine from law school was there and he was like, ooh, 2 sisters to stalk. This guy has a type.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh, so creepy.
That is very unsettling.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, it never escalated to violence or anything, but I also started driving to work and not taking the bus and stuff. So I changed my behavior in a way that was more expensive for me.
Right.
And, you know, to avoid being stalked by some, you know, gross dude. And that's what a lot of women end up having to do, right? It's like, oh, well, never go anywhere alone and always take a cab. Like all these things that people tell you to do to stay safe are usually inconvenient, inexpensive. They mean you can't have a good time, right? It's always like, well, you know, go to the bathroom and then leave the bar from the back door. And it's like, well, why does this like stalker get to go out to a bar and have fun? And I'm the one who has to leave and like sit at home afraid. It's awful. And women have had to go so far as to, you know, go on the run and change their names and live a secret life and, you know, lose touch with their friends and family. It's
crazy.
It's tragic.
Have you ever read Invisible Women?
No.
So it's a book by Carolyn Criado Perez. And what you were talking about is, you know, kind of reminded me of that book mentioning you had to change the way you know, went to work. And not taking public transportation and having to do something more expensive because you're worried about your safety. And there is one chapter in particular where she covers women in public transportation and all of these issues that are overlooked in city planning. And one of them is talking about how unsafe women feel on public transportation. And not realizing when people say, oh, you could just take a taxi or just do this, that there is a group of women who cannot afford to do that and don't have another choice.
Not to mention the number of times that the taxi driver was the creep.
Yeah.
Like, don't assume taxis are safe.
No.
At least with Uber, it's easier to figure out who the driver was. And Uber and Lyft have done like background checks and stuff. I have had problems with cab drivers where I called the police and they were like, we don't care.
It's like, what do you want us to do about it?
And it's like, I was in a car alone with this person, and in one case he said, I'm going to take you home with me and put you in a little room. And I was like, what? Terrifying.
Just like, no, thank you.
No, I'm good. I'm good living at my own house. Like, oh my God. He didn't like where I lived. He thought my neighborhood in Brooklyn was too dangerous, so he wanted to keep me safe at his house. I mean,
one of the protector ones. That's not a theme.
And he had a whole plan about like art movies he wanted to show me, meals he wanted to cook for me. I mean, I had never seen this person before in my life. I took a cab home because it was late at night and I wanted to be safe, and it was one of the scariest experiences of my life. I literally was considering jumping out of the moving car.
Jeez.
And I did the whole, well, my boyfriend's at home waiting for me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that thing that all women do to try to feel safe. It's terrifying. So sorry to start on such a dark note, people in the Buffyverse, but it's an important topic, and I'm sure that we will be talking about other aspects of violence against women in the future. But
there's one part that still kind of rubs me the wrong way. You know, poor Willow being freaked out and going to sleep over at Buffy's after she sees her fish, and she kind of makes that comment about how, you know,
with the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Angel, the only thing he thinks about is still Buffy.
Yeah, he
Like,
hasn't changed that much.
no, and I was like, oh, that's creepy.
I
And
mean,
I
he
think
stalked her when he was Angel too. Like
Mhm.
first
Oh, yeah.
season especially.
he knew who she was before she had ever even
Yeah, and he like
seen
lurks
him.
and follows her and watches her. I mean,
But I
he's
thought
a predator.
it ties in kind of nicely with the last episode in the discussion about, the love potion and Xander messing around with, people's feelings and emotions, and how obsession is very different than love. It's not too far off, but obsession is dangerous. And that is what we're seeing from Angel, at this point. And,
exactly.
it is unsettling. When she said that, I was like, oh, yeah, it's true, but I don't like it.
Okay. All right. No more stalking talk for now.
Honestly, my next point was about our little love triangle again with Angel and Spike and
bring it on,
Drusilla. Because, the dynamic of those three is never boring. You never know what the heck is going to come up. And Angel's taunting of Spike just seems a little bit more elevated and next level in this episode. And implying that, he and Drew are having sex behind Spike's back, or I guess not so much behind Spike's back, as Angel's being pretty clear about talking about it. But the way that Drusilla still seems to almost revere Angel is just so unsettling. And I think the way they play it off is pretty intricate and subtle, but that was one thing. Every time there was a scene in that factory, I was sucked in.
It's so engaging. The rising animosity from Spike is one of my favorite things this whole season. He's so funny when he's mad at Angel. And, he has that great speech in this episode where he's like, I preferred the old Buffy whipped Angelus myself. This one's not playing with a full sack. Yeah. He's like, oh my God, the more time I spend with you, the more I hate you. I hate that you're, moving in on my girl. I hate that you're, endangering us by angering the Slayer. I don't understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. Like, why are you so mean to me? Angel calls him Roller Boy, which is about the most ableist thing you can call a person who's in a wheelchair.
And the joke about bringing him with him next time in case he needs a good parking space.
Yeah, so mean and inappropriate and ableist again. We don't know if Angelus is also racist because there's no people of color in Sunnydale right now.
Right.
It's a Southern California city with no Latino people.
Oy.
Sort of surprising, and no Asian people. That is some criticism that the show got a lot of in season 2, and they make some inroads in season 3. There are a few more characters of color, but it's never really a very diverse cast.
No, it really isn't. And then sometimes the characters that they add on that are diverse are also a little problematic in 2D.
Yeah.
But
it was the 90s.
That's true. Gosh, I did like to. What does Drew say when she brings in Sunshine, this cute little puppy, to cheer Spike up?
Her owner died.
Yep,
without a fight.
Yep, I was like, all right, Drew, like that's great. And then the way she almost kind of airplanes it to Spike, like you would a toddler, and she's like,
yeah, like he's a baby.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how they kept a straight face during that part, but it's very it's lighthearted and also dark as hell, which is very enjoyable.
I mean, she murdered someone and took their puppy, and she intends for Spike to eat the puppy. I mean, it's bad.
Ugh.
And then she takes the puppy with her when she goes to the magic shop later. And I love the way that the guy's like, sorry, we're closed. And then he looks and he's like, oh, you're a vampire.
Yeah.
You don't care about us being closed. Rules mean nothing to you. I'm probably going to die now.
He accepts it.
Yeah. Poor magic box guy.
Aww. Oh, gosh. The title of the episode was also
Passion.
Yeah, one of the points, and it's brought up a few times throughout the episode. One thing, Giles makes a comment to Buffy, as the Slayer, you don't have the luxury of being enslaved to your passions. And I was like, yeah, but
that was just foreshadowing.
Very much so.
For and then what was going to happen with Giles at the end of the episode, right? Like when Buffy saw Angel at her house, even though he was like, harassing her mom, she kept her cool. And even Willow was like, you'd be proud of her. She kept her cool.
Yeah.
And then Giles just doesn't keep his cool at all. He completely falls for his own passion about Jenny and his hatred of Angel.
It's still so painful to think about. And then Angel's, narration, the opening lines I love is, it can sound, parts of it, almost, pleasant and romanticized, but then it's also really unsettling when he says, passion, it lies in all of us, sleeping, waiting, and though unwanted, unbidden, it will stir, open its jaws, and howl. I was like, that's one way to look at it.
It's poetic.
It really is. And he says, passion is the source of our finest moments, the joy of love, the clarity of hatred, and the ecstasy of grief. And that clarity of hatred, as soon as I heard that, I was like, well, that pretty much captures Giles in that moment after he finds Jenny dead in his bed at the hands of Angel. And he just does not give a shit. Like, he's going to go all out to get to Angel and exact his revenge. And
the look on his face when he's loading up his bag of weapons is just pure determination.
Mm-hmm.
And he's calm too. He's not all riled up. He's like, well, all right, now I got to go do this. And he has such a good entrance into the factory.
Yeah,
First of all, he throws that Molotov cocktail right when Angel says, I have everything under control. So that timing is perfect.
Are you insane? We're supposed to kill the bitch, not leave gag gifts in the friends' beds.
But Spike, the bad teacher was going to restore Angel's soul.
What if she did? If you ask me, I find myself preferring the old Buffy whipped Angelus.
This new improved one is not playing with the full sack. I love a good slaughter as much as the next bloke. But his little pranks will only leave us with one incredibly brassed-off slayer.
Don't worry, roller boy. I've got everything under control.
And when he charges in with that baseball bat and he so gracefully puts it through the flame, lights it on fire, swings it around his head and swings it at Angel, all in sort of one graceful motion, I was like, ooh, Giles is sexy.
Right? I was like, should I be finding him attractive in this moment? Is that wrong? But interesting.
Still in his 3-piece tweed, his stuffy librarian costume that he wears constantly.
Oh, you've got to.
It looks so uncomfortable, but yeah.
He had some pretty great, and there's moments of levity throughout this episode that I really enjoyed too, especially with Giles and Xander when Jonathan, well, I guess, do we know if he's Jonathan yet?
I don't think we know his name yet.
Okay,
yeah,
so
the character will eventually
Danny
be
Strong,
yeah,
a student at Sunnydale, and this girl walk into the library, actually wanting to research and study, and all of the Scoobies look at them like, what the hell are you guys doing in here? And Giles like, Xander, this is a school library, and Xander just like deadpan, since when? Like, what are you talking about? Love that line. And then, Giles coming in again, wanting to rescue and like step in with Buffy after Angel has not so kindly informed her mom that they had sex. I love that moment between him and Willow when
Me
she's like,
too.
yeah, and it's so cute. He's like, do you think I should intervene on behalf of Buffy and say something? And Willow's like, sure, what would you say? And he just kind of sputters, and she just smiles and leans forward and opens the door for him to leave.
Yeah.
It's like, yep. Bye.
There's nothing you can say. Like, without revealing that Buffy is the Slayer, like,
Right?
first of all, her mother's gonna be like, why are you here?
Yeah, like the school librarian?
Like, what are you getting involved in my daughter's sex life? You're the problem. Another older man.
Right.
Like, I'm reporting you to the principal. Like, yeah, that was not gonna go well.
Speaking of older man, that quote that, when Joyce and Buffy are having the talk and she's like, he's older than you, too old, Buffy, and he's obviously not very stable. And all I wrote in my notes was like, Joyce, that is the understatement of the century.
Yeah. I love that scene so much because as like upset as Joyce is, she barely raises her voice, right? She is respectful and kind to Buffy, even while she is letting Buffy know in no uncertain terms that she is very upset about the situation.
It's so sweet.
And that when she gets to the, like, you can push me out of your life, but you can never make me stop caring about you. I'm always like, everyone should have a mom like Joyce. Like, oh, she's so good. And then it's so cute when she's like, I guess that was the talk. And Buffy goes, how'd it go? And she's like, I don't know, it was my first. Like, it was such a real mother-daughter moment. And I love the scene when Joyce sits down on the bed next to Buffy. The two of them do this like mirror body language thing in that moment where I'm like, oh, they look so much like mother and daughter right now. It's just a little camera trick that just really drives that scene home. It's beautiful.
Ugh, and it works. And, I love that we're getting more of Joyce too. And especially, finding that drawing that Angel has drawn of her. That was one moment where, you feel this kind of protectiveness coming out. It's just like, no, you can't hurt Joyce. This is not okay. Like, I get it. I expect it when it comes to, it's not good, but I expect it when it comes to Buffy and Willow and Ginny Calendar and Giles and all of these people that are involved in that world and in the know. But poor Joyce, I still don't. It's like, tell her about vampires already.
Yeah.
Like,
she's not safe, right?
No.
She doesn't know the rules. She doesn't know not to invite them in. Like, I don't know if I would have told my parents, but if I had Joyce for a mom, I would tell Joyce.
Right. And I think about that sometimes, times where I was afraid to, and I was very fortunate. I have very supportive parents who, had experiences in their own childhood growing up that made them want to be, the best parents they could, and were really looking forward to raising kids. And there have been so many times where I had been worried to tell my parents something, and I waited way too long, and then I told them, and it was not at all bad, or not near as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, like, I could see myself being like, no, I can't tell them I'm a vampire slayer, but it'd probably be fine. And I feel like Joyce and Buffy have that relationship where, it can't be any worse at this point than letting her know that you slept with a guy who she thinks is what, your like community college counselor or something
Tutor,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, like that's not much better. Like, just rip off the Band-Aid, or she's gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
But that scene where Angel is talking to her outside and she has like you said, no idea how much danger she is actually in. I'm just like, all right, guys, tell Joyce this is not okay.
Yeah.
We need to come
the
clean.
moment when she's like, struggling to get her keys and he's like leaning over her. It was so visceral. I feel like I've been in that situation where I'm like, get to the right, where's the key?
Yep.
It's like panic. And then of course we get another panic, woman in danger scene, the set piece, right? The chase scene with Jenny and Angel. It's so cool. It's such a cool scene. They run up and down all these school hallways, and through corridors. She's wearing chunky heeled Mary Jane's, very 90s, and like a tight skirt. So she's not in like running clothes, but she's still really fast. And Angel is like laughing and smiling. He thinks this is like the most fun he's had ever.
It's
right?
Like playing with her.
Completely. Like, I mean, I love my cat, but like that's what he did when he caught a mouse. He was like, run so I could chase you. Like that's his favorite thing.
Like batting at it, making it move, think it has a chance, like just and I think, you know, the way that they build tension in that scene is so expertly done. Because I think I texted you when I was watching it, like my lunch break. She's like, I forgot how intense this episode is when he's chasing Miss Calendar through the school. And you know, like, you know, as a rewatch, you know she's going to get killed. But it's still, I can't help it.
It's painful every time.
And, you know, the way the face-to-face killing is also something that gets me. And I know there was a discussion at some point with JW and some of the other writers about whether or not Angel should have his, you know, vampire face on at that point as opposed to his human one. And I think they thought the human aspect of it would be too disturbing, and that's true. But it was still incredibly disturbing as it was.
The shot where it happens, this gorgeous you know, semicircle window behind them in sort of a royal blue, and they're not quite silhouettes, but silhouetted against this window, and it almost looks like they're about to kiss, right? It's kind of a romantic pose. And then he says, sorry, Jenny, this is where you get off. And the way that he snaps her neck and looks away, like it was like nothing. Like it was just whatever. And he's like, oh, I never get tired of doing that. And it is a memory, that moment is emblazoned on my brain. Like I will never forget it. It is such a strong moment. And it's also beautiful, right? The image is beautiful. And then, you know, the next scene or a couple scenes later where Giles finds Jenny, that scene is beautiful too, right? The swelling opera music and the romantic lighting and the rose petals and the candles, and Giles is like, I'm in for a good night, right? Like, he's like, oh, look what Jenny did. She like put candles going up the stairs. This is so romantic. Let me get the wine. He's like, smoothed down his hair. He's so happy. And then the
devastation.
Complete devastation. And oh my God, it is such a beautiful scene. It is so well acted by Anthony Stewart Head. And
his
oh my God,
eyes
so gorgeous.
Light up as he's walking into his house, seeing these things, thinking like, you know, we're finally past this, like it's gonna be a great night. Like you can see it in his eyes, and he does such an excellent job where you see like this hope and love swelling, and to just have it ripped away like that is so brutal. And, you know, we've talked before, like, who thinks of this stuff? Like, who conceives of something so horrible? Like, that is just, you know, taking the knife and twisting it, and like, it's just brutal. But I think that if they hadn't done it like that, if it wasn't as cruel, then the impact wouldn't be as significant on the audience. We would not be as afraid of Angel as Angelus. The stakes wouldn't be as high. And Mrs. Calendar had been, you know, one of the regulars on the show. We were used to seeing her. So at that point, you're like, well,
It
who
was a
could be
huge
next?
shock at the time because plot armor was a real thing.
Huh. Oh, yeah.
And everyone had it on shows back then. Like, people just didn't get killed who were regular characters. So when one did, it was always a really big deal. And I remember being shocked. Like, what? He did, like, I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
And it's, like you said, it's cruel. It's the maximum amount of cruelty to Giles. I am pretty sure that Angel was waiting for him in his apartment because the opera music starts when Giles is at the door. And Giles is like, ooh, opera music. And I couldn't tell at first if that was like background music or if it was in the scene. But there is a scene where you could see that his record player is on and the record is spinning. Yeah.
Well, we know Angel likes to watch.
Yeah. So he waited for Giles to get home, turned the music on, and then receded to go, to watch Giles get the news. And then he went over to watch Buffy get the news because that was what he really wanted. And he loved it, right? The look on his face when he's looking through the window is like, that was like the best night I've had in years, like so happy.
I always wonder, like, and every time I see that scene, I think, this show is so criminally underrated sometimes for the actors and their performances on it, and the way that Sarah Michelle Gellar and Allison Hannigan portray like that instant grief getting a phone call like that. Every time it's like heart-wrenching. And that's one trivia bit that I found interesting, is that they had the phone hooked up so the actors could actually speak to each other. Isn't that neat? Like in real time, to make it so much more real and poignant. And David Boreanaz, like the look on his face, like the sheer evil glee watching these two women break down. I'm just like, how did he like get into that mindset? Like, what was set like that day when he's, as a character doing all these horrific things and he has to portray just reveling in their grief.
The laughing and the enjoyment. It's what makes him scarier, because it's one thing if he did horrible things, but the fact that he does horrible things and it cracks him up, it's like, this person doesn't have a line.
You said that. I just inadvertently, for listeners at home who can't see me, covered my neck.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no. It's just, but you're right. Like, something about this episode and that image in front of that window when he kills Ginny is just stuck in my brain. I can picture it clearly no matter how long it's been since I've seen the episode. It's just,
it's amazing.
So impactful.
So at one point, the gang is talking about what Giles is going to do next, and Xander has this little speech. If Giles wants to kill the fiend or go after the fiend who killed his girlfriend, I say faster pussycat, kill, kill. So Faster Pussycat Kill Kill is a 1965 exploitation or sexploitation film directed by Russ Meyer. And it's a cult classic. The plot is irrelevant, really, but it's about 3 go-go dancers who embark on a spree of kidnapping and murder in the California desert. Jeez. And at first, it was regarded as just a pure exploitation film, barely better than softcore porn. But over the years, it has gained a lot of critical and cult attention as a film that does present women in different roles than they usually are, especially in the 60s. These women are violent. They're unapologetic. They are very much owners of their own sexuality. And so it's a film that feminists have sort of read into as having a feminist message, even if that wasn't really Russ Meyer's original intention. And we talked about this a little bit when we talked about whether or not David Boreanaz's Angel is coded as bisexual. And I said, well, back then there weren't any bisexual characters on TV, so people had to find it where they, where they could. It's called like reading into the text, where you apply a filter of either feminism or, queer identity onto a narrative to get meaning out of it that wasn't necessarily the first intention of the writer, or sometimes was, but it was coded, and so it has to be deciphered. I went down a film nerd rabbit hole. First of all, I watched most of Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. I was so excited because I was like, oh, I've never seen this film. And I had this moment of like, oh my God, we live in the future. I just picked up my Roku remote and said Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. And it popped up on the TV.
That's so
it was
handy.
Free with ads to view on the Roku channel. And I clicked play. And I kept thinking about, back when I was a film student in college, and if I was doing research and I needed to see a film from the 60s, I would check my school library. Almost always they didn't have it. I would check the video rental stores that were in the region, because there were, there was like Blockbuster chains, but then there were also like independent video stores.
Yeah,
and some of them would have interesting stuff. Or I'd go interlibrary loan. And one time I had to go all the way into New York City and go to the Museum of the Moving Image to see something for a paper that I was writing. And the fact that now I could just be
able to talk into your remote.
Yeah.
That movie sounds like that Quentin Tarantino movie, Death Proof. It's giving me the same vibes.
Yeah, it's very much in that same tradition. This is one of the early examples of that kind of movie, but there are tons of movies and TV shows and things that have referenced it in various ways. I found some kind of cool news that in May of 2021, it was reported that a TV series adaptation of Faster Pussycat Kill Kill is in development from none other than Norman Reedus's Big Bald Head Productions.
Ooh.
And
I'll watch it.
Buffy fans, if you're not a Walking Dead fan, Norman Reedus is a major part of The Walking Dead, and Kara and I are both Walking Dead fans. Yeah. I found an academic article, and I read the whole thing because I'm a nerd, called Exploitation Feminism, Trashiness, Low Fidelity, and Utopia in She-Devils on Wheels and Blood Orgy of the Leather Girls. And it's an article about doing a feminist read of an exploitation film. It's not actually about Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, although it is mentioned as one of the sort of foundational films for this. This was written by Christina Pia Hofer, and I just want to read the introduction. It's called Trashing Male Supremacy, Man-Eaters, and Leather Girls, 1968 and 1988. And then it lists a bunch of movies, Pussycat, Teenage Gang Debs, The Miniskirt Mob, The Hellcats, Sisters in Leather, or The Female Bunch. These are all these like girl crime gang movies from the mid-60s onwards. American exploitation cinema has spawned a number of male-directed girl gang movies that present audiences with rather ambivalent politics. On the one hand, these films feature active, strong, outspoken female protagonists who claim privileges that mainstream cinema at the time often only granted male characters. These female protagonists routinely assert physical violence, organize in closely knit, gender-segregated gangs, or lead mixed-gender groups, resist hegemonic and patriarchal family norms, carry weapons, ride fast cars and motorcycles, compete with male rivals and among each other, express an unapologetic and autonomous sexuality, and generally take great delight in being, quote, bad. On the other hand, however, the overt sensationalism and unflinching commercial motivation typical of exploitation cinema also often put these unusual female protagonists on display as a freakish, sexualized spectacle. And Faster Pussycat Kill Kill definitely does both of those things. It is a weird, weird movie. It's shot in sort of a disjointed way. There are a lot of scenes shot from below, so you're looking up at characters. And all the main women, at least, when they laugh, they go, ha, 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 in this really fake way. They're wearing tons of makeup. They're constantly go-go dancing for some reason. It's a really, really strange movie, but I was excited that I could watch it. I've been meaning to watch it for many, many years. I've just always loved the title because the title's amazing.
That is a good title. And thinking about whether or not Xander would be aware of that movie and capable of making that reference.
I think so. They're big movie watchers.
Anytime he would be able to see, scantily clad women as a teenage boy, I think that Xander would have been spot on. Especially that quip he makes when Willow makes a comment about how she and Buffy had like a sleepover with weapons, and he's like, "Did either of you like have a camera to capture?" And I was like, "Shut up, Xander."
Shut up, Xander. Yeah.
Oh, buddy. Well, that is interesting. Just from one line.
Film nerd. Yeah.
I love it. And the way Giles, he is ready when he goes over to that factory.
Yeah. I love that the factory is like destroyed. They don't just change sets on this show. They're like, let's burn that one down and then move on to the next location.
Oh gosh. The factory is not my favorite set.
Never was. Yeah.
So
I was glad to see
right
it go.
This.
And the end of that scene, when Buffy is fighting Angel and he's like, "You gonna let your man burn?" And so she has to save Giles and Angel gets away. And then Giles is still all worked up, right? And he's like, "Why did you come here? This isn't your fight." And Buffy full on smacks him, like punches him in the face, not killing him, thank God.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I can't lose you. I can't do this without you." And they have this amazing, like, sobbing embrace in the rain.
Such a good
so
moment.
Sad.
And it just sets up what's to come in the rest of the season so perfectly. Like, I remember rewatching, I don't think I saw this as a kid. This was not one of the episodes that I remember watching. So in college, when I was getting the DVDs via Netflix in the mail, the first time I saw this episode, I remember thinking, like, this wasn't the finale? Like, what else is gonna happen this season? I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, it's just such a huge episode. And now I'm like, oh, just wait. Like, I had no idea
there's more
what
coming.
I was in for. But like, it's pretty ballsy of them to make those, especially for a weekly kind of monster of the week show back in the late 90s. But it's just, they nailed it.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
So on a completely different note, I was really enjoying the visual aesthetics of the show this episode. Especially, I'm a big sucker for Southern California architecture. Giles's apartment is very sort of Spanish mission style with there's like stucco walls on the outside, and he's got all these like Spanish tiles that tile like the fronts of his stairs, and they're somewhere else in the house as well. And all of his furniture looks kind of antique. Everything is brown and gold and green. There's those beautiful ornate light fixtures. I just want to rip those right off the wall. And then Buffy lives in this like craftsman style house that's a little bit more traditional, but they're very much more common on the West Coast than they are on the East Coast. And they are so cute. They're really big in like San Francisco. It's a big style. And I've always been a big fan of it. And then the high school is like classic Southern California, right? It's like concrete, open corridors and breezeways and courtyards and things like that. I went to high school in New Hampshire, and we had like one little tiny outdoor space with two benches, and that was it. Because most of the year, it's way too cold to be outside.
Oh, yeah. Like, nope, not gonna work.
There was also some great 90s fashion. I loved the sheer over solid look that Jenny was wearing. Yes. That was a big look for me in the 90s and early 2000s. I did that a ton. Buffy has been wearing a lot of animal print lately, which I get a big kick out of. She was rocking one of those tiny backpacks that's like clearly not big enough to hold any textbooks in it.
Yeah, and I definitely had one of those too.
Willow had that ridiculous happy face backpack and another dopey sweater. I know they're doing it to make her seem young and innocent, but like it's so hard to look at. It's like, what are you wearing?
It's like, just put her in pastels or something. Like, you don't have to go as far with these horrible
She doesn't
sweaters.
have to always have an animal on her sweater. I didn't really spend much time looking at Xander's clothes. He does a lot of like aloha shirts and plaids. His clothes look sort of general dude in the 90s to me. They're not particularly noteworthy. And of course, Giles is always in his British tweed, so that's both old-fashioned and timeless.
Yeah. So I think Giles, like, the older I get, the more I relate to Giles.
Yeah.
Like his record player and all of his classic records and his style. His home is cozy, but also like, well appointed and decorated. Like, he just I love Giles. I just remember like Sarah Michelle Gellar growing up. Whenever I would get, I don't know what magazine, like 17 magazine and whatever else was popular at that time, like I just thought she could do no wrong. And that's why I got my hair cut into a bob when I was going into 6th grade, because I wanted to look like Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I thought I did. I didn't. No. But it was, I just remember being so influenced.
Me too.
By what they were wearing at that time. And those lovely, you talked about the heeled, like clunky Mary Janes.
Yeah.
That Jenny Calendar was wearing. I think those are back now.
Yeah. A lot of 90s clothes are coming back.
Platform sandals. I was like, all right, I'll bust out my Steve Madden platform sandals.
Yeah.
I have some of those around.
I went blonde in the early 2000s for a while, and I would straighten my hair sometimes. And whenever my younger brother saw me like that, he'd go, yes, very Buffy.
That's great.
And I'd be like, no, that's not why. Okay,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, that is why I did that.
Oh, gosh. Oh, and we haven't talked about Cordelia.
Oh,
in this episode, the way that her immediate thought is, oh my god, I've let Angel into my car. Like, does that mean he can come into my car anytime that he wants?
And then she's like, I had to talk my grandmother into trading cards with me. I'm like, Cordelia?
Poor grandma. It's like, grandma, you can go. I gotta stay. Then
oh my god.
To Buffy's house, after Miss Calendar's died, and her car is just filled with garlic and crosses. It's like, oh my goodness. I love her.
And when they're at Willow's house, and she goes, Willow, are you aware there are no fish in your aquarium? And Willow just makes that face. It's, oh my god.
She's just like, don't bring it up. Don't talk about it.
It's really painful.
God. I'm also very glad that Willow's parents did not give in and get her a puppy, because I don't think I could have handled that.
That would have been rough.
And also think the network would have loved that very much, because killing a puppy is not going to go over well.
No, especially when the demographic you're after is like teenagers. Like, no, not a good idea. This is the first episode where we find out that Angel has artistic ability. That does come up again in the future, but I thought it was really funny. I'm like, he's good at sketching because he's sketchy.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get that out of my head.
That's funny. But it also sounds about right. Like, he's lurking in the shadows. He's good at, like, sketching and bringing what he sees to life in the creepiest way possible, leaving it in a nondescript envelope on a pillow. I was like, I don't know how Buffy is able to even fall asleep in her room.
I know. I like when she and Willow are sitting in her bed, like not sleeping. I'm like, why don't you guys go to Xander's house? There's no way Angel's ever been invited in there.
Exactly. Like, just go somewhere and like tell your mom, I don't know, go outside, cut the water off, be like, oh no, we don't have water. Xander's gonna let us stay over at his house. Like, something.
Yeah.
Don't stay there. And how Buffy ever gets any homework done, I'll never understand.
I know, seriously.
It's just like, how do you have time?
Crazy.
But this episode, I think this is another one. I know I said this last week, but this is another one that would probably at least be in my top 5 or 10 that I would tell people to watch if they wanted to get a good sense of what Buffy is.
And especially for figuring out like the story with Angel. This sort of sums it all up in one episode, where we see that Buffy's in pain. We understand that she used to love him and now he's evil. We see just how evil. It's like the Angelus story in a nutshell. I love that Buffy, even in this horrible time, finds it in her heart to tell Jenny and Giles to get back together, right? She's not done being angry at Jenny, but she doesn't want Giles to be lonely, and she says, or anyone. And it's so warm and loving. It's
very mature of her.
Yeah, it's such a loving thing to do because she cares about Giles and she knows that he wants to be with Jenny and that he's not being with Jenny because he's loyal to her. And it's a beautiful moment. First of all, she's like, I know you feel bad, and good.
Yeah, you should.
But
that was very Buffy.
She's just a very loving person, and she has all this compassion, and it's something you don't get to see in heroes all the time. This softness that they have, and Buffy has this, and it's a strength. It's what brings people to her and makes her a leader is this love that she has. It's amazing.
And her ability to empathize with people. Like, especially for, a teenager, that's a very big thing. And I almost tear up when I see that scene between her and Jenny Calendar, especially knowing what's coming.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, why are they gonna do this to us? Just like set it up so nicely, and Giles being so excited. But it was very big of Buffy.
Yeah.
To go to, especially, also the fact that she's a teacher.
Yeah.
Who was in a relationship with another faculty member. It always makes me wonder, like, what do these other random students at Sunnydale think? They have to overhear some of this crap.
Yeah. And be like,
and notice weird. That, like, why are these people always hanging out with our librarian?
Yeah.
Like, that's a bit odd. But Willow being so excited to teach and handle Miss Calendar's class is also just so pure and precious. I love that she was just so amped thinking about, for even 10 or 15 minutes, getting to be in charge.
Yeah.
I was like, good for Willow. It's another little moment of levity and awful foreshadowing, but,
I have some fun trivia that I pulled off the internet. And one of them is that Ed Sheeran apparently is a huge fan of Buffy.
Nice.
And he sampled the track Remembering Jenny that's played at the end of this episode in his song A Fire Love. And the song was inspired by the show. So I got to go check that out.
For sure.
And that in the scene where that song Remembering Jenny plays, when they're next to Jenny's grave, the voice singing is Anthony Head.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Got that. That is neat.
When Angel is harassing Jenny in the computer room and she's standing near the door, there's a sign that usually says, remember to back up your files. And Angel has changed it to say, remember to hack up your files. Because on top of being cruel, he's also impish.
Oh, yeah. What does Giles say? Like, he lost his soul, but...
Oh, he rediscovered his sense of whimsy.
Yeah, sense of whimsy. I was like, that's one way to put it. That's for sure.
Pretty disturbing. And then, I just wanted to say, I love the concept of everyday weapons and good weapons. Like, those are his everyday weapons. He keeps his good weapons at the house. Like, all right.
All right. Cool. I think these'll do in a pinch. Goodness gracious. Although I would like to see Giles's weapon collection.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's interesting. And each item probably also has a story.
That's true.
Maybe I just have a little crush on Giles now. Maybe that's
do.
what's happening.
Okay, Kara, we've come to that point in the episode where we have to defend. Does it still slay?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with it absolutely does. Once again. You know, this episode, we both mentioned how it's stuck with us and how impactful and intense it is. And I almost think it was a bit ahead of its time and underappreciated, especially being on the network that it was. But I could, rewatch this one over and over again and probably find something new to appreciate about it every time.
Yeah. And I think it's more relevant than ever because stalking behavior is not going away. It's a part of our society. No. It's a part of rape culture. And people need to see examples of it and understand how scary it is and how dangerous it is. And this is, one narrative that people could pay attention to and learn from.
Maybe a little bit more digestible than some other ways you could be presented with a stalking storyline, since there is still that supernatural aspect to it, but it's got a real message that will probably resonate forever. Honestly,
I think
this is a problem that's not going to go away entirely, but hopefully it's one that people will become more educated on and aware of, and it'll diminish over time.
We can hope. So there's no news, shocking. But let's head on over to the bronze and see what some of our listeners have to say.
Bronze things of bronze.
Why don't you read that first one?
Okay, our first listener, Katie Allman, said this is one of those episodes where people watch it for the first time and realize that Joss Whedon isn't pulling his punches. You see Angelus for the psycho that he was and see, just like Buffy, that not everything will be okay and that some things will never be forgiven. Killing Jenny was such a shock, and the way he posed her body was unbelievably cruel. Poor Giles. He was so happy and it got snatched away from him. I know.
It is really sad.
Ugh, that's so rough.
And like we were saying, so memorable and unforgivable. Jolene Abbey, a regular contributor, thank you, Jolene, says, Oh no, I hate watching this one. It makes me really uncomfortable because I know what's coming. And then the bit at the end where the disc falls down. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. So Jenny has created some kind of translation that could be used to re-soul Angel, give him his soul back. And Angel, destroys the computer, destroys the pages. But he doesn't know enough about computers to have gotten that disc. So she backed it up on disc, and it's on her desk, and then it fell on the floor at the very end, sort of ominously bouncing a little bit, and we don't know what's going to happen next.
That gives me hope.
Yeah.
I do like that they show us that at the end. It's like, it's not destroyed. still there.
The information can be found.
And there is kind of that little slow motion effect as it's back. That's kind of funny. I like it.
It's great.
I haven't seen a floppy disk in a really long time.
Yeah. That's a throwback, all right.
How many people watching this show for the first time these days don't know what a floppy disk is?
Most people?
Yeah. I would love to know if there's any listeners. I think a lot of our listeners are probably older, but if you didn't know what a floppy disk was, I really want to know.
Yeah.
I'm
curious. Write in and let us know, especially if this is your first watch, because I just really want to hear from first time watchers.
Definitely.
All right, that's the end of the main section of the podcast.
Stay tuned if you want to hear the spoilery discussion.
And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find all our contact information at podcastica.com, or head over to Facebook to facebook.com/podcastica. And we put up posts every week for the episode that's about to be covered, so you can send in your comments that way. And also there's other information about how to find us there.
And you can always write in or record a voice message or find links to any of our social media pages and all of our other shows. For those of you that aren't aware, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but we do have an Instagram as well, and it's at StillSlangcast. We, put up feedback posts, share Buffy content, so if you haven't already, come check us out over there as well.
That would be great. And when you're at podcastica.com, there's so many shows on there that you might enjoy. If you're enjoying this one, I bet you would enjoy Yellow Jackets, although it's a lot more violent.
It is pretty violent.
There's right now they're doing on The Cast of Us, they're doing a full rewatch from the beginning of The Walking Dead.
Love it.
That's been pretty fun. But the show I'm really hooked on right now is Fall of the House of Usher. And also, I'm simultaneously listening to old episodes of Strange Indeed coverage of the Midnight Mass, because I'm obsessed with Midnight Mass right now. It is so good. It is so good. And if you are a Buffy fan, I think you would like it. Check it out. It's amazing. It's on Netflix.
Mike Flanagan is, just killing it over the last few years. Yeah. Everything
He's
that
an
he
amazing
puts out,
writer. So
I will watch. Like, I have been re-listening to episodes of Podcastica's coverage of Better Call Saul. I was late to the Breaking Bad party and the Better Call Saul party, and I heard Jason, our Podcastica founder, talk so much about how he loved Breaking Bad and I should give it another chance. And finally I did, and I think I watched it all in like 2 weeks.
It's amazing show. It's so well written. It's so well made. The characters are so compelling, even though they're not good people.
No, but it was fascinating. Like, I could not stop. So I've been enjoying listening to older episodes and coverage. Better Call Saul is, it's a little lighter. It's a little different than the primary show, but it's a fun one. So that's what I've been doing.
So if you are listening and you like what we do, give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies. That is a joke I stole from Mike Birbiglia. Give us a review, write in and send us some feedback. It doesn't cost you anything, and we love to hear it.
Next time, we'll be covering Season 2, Episode 21, Becoming Part 1.
So we're skipping 3 episodes. We're skipping Killed by Death, I Only Have Eyes for You, and Go Fish. None of those are plot essential, but all 3 of them are really fun and really good. And Go Fish features a before they were famous Wentworth Miller, who went on to star in Prison Break and the Flash TV show, and he's pretty great. He's kind of iconic. So you might enjoy that.
That is kind of a fun episode.
Yeah, it's pretty gross, but also awesome. Yeah. So thanks, everybody. And
Does this look like a Barnes & Noble?
This is a school library.
Since when?
All right, that's the end of the non-spoiler section. If you want to avoid the spoilers, you should stop listening now. And we are going to move on to the...
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do have a favorite child.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
I use memes as a coping mechanism.
It's Mattress Firm's once-a-year sale and clearance. Get up to 60% off select Sealy, plus a free adjustable base, all with free and fast delivery. Deals this big won't last long, so don't miss out. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
Watcher's Diaries.
It's too bad we can't sneak a look at the Watcher Diaries. I'm sure it's full of fun facts to know and tell.
Yeah, that's too bad. That stuff is private.
Also, Giles keeps them in his office, in his personal files.
Most importantly, it would be wrong.
I made a mistake in the last episode. I said that Spike does a poetry reading in the Buffy finale, but it's in the Angel finale.
Oh, and on Angel.
Yeah. I had a hard time watching this episode and not thinking about the allegations of abusive behavior by JW on the set. He has come out and said publicly that Xander is his stand-in. Xander is supposed to be him in the show. Xander gets all the girls. Like, he gets to make out with all the prettiest girls. And he breaks Cordelia's heart. And in real life, the person that JW was treating the worst was Charisma Carpenter. And I think that he has some kind of issue either with her, with some woman who rejected him at some point, who he wants revenge on, and he was getting that revenge by treating Charisma Carpenter badly and by having her character get stomped on by his character on the show. It's creepy because then he wrote these characters, Xander last week and Angel this week, whose response to a breakup is wanting revenge. And who are angry at women. Xander is mean to Cordelia all the time. He says horrible stuff to her. Calls her slutty and all this other stuff.
Not to mention he sexualizes every woman he comes across.
And knowing that that's a stand-in for Whedon, I couldn't get it out of my head this particular viewing. And I was just creeped out by it. And I don't bring this up to make any kind of point specifically, but just to say, like, again, that behavior is unacceptable and disgusting. Charisma Carpenter deserved better. Everybody who was on that set deserved better. And one of the reasons that we didn't get spin-offs and, reboots and things of this very popular, rich world building show is because these stars did not want to work with him again. Like, I think that's why there was never a Faith spinoff. She was like, no, thank you.
Yeah, that says a lot. Well, and I think part of the, one of the interviews that we referenced a little bit earlier where Joss mentions, this is sending a message that Angel's not just a little evil, he's truly evil. And he also made comments that, no one's safe on the show. And he made a joke in that interview that it's also a message to the actors, like, be very good or I'll kill you. And that could not have been more pointed at Charisma, I think.
Yeah.
And what she dealt with on set that only came out years later. But it's true. Every time Xander says something creepy or, a male character does something creepy, I can't help it. Like, Joss's behavior pops into my head. Which is a little disappointing, but, art imitating life, imitating art.
Yeah, and I mean, it kept me from watching the show for many years. I was like so grossed out by what I had heard about him that I couldn't think about anything else. And I've managed to like squash it for the most part, but every now and then it pops back into my consciousness and I'm like, ah.
Yep. It's when I'm not thinking about, like, some like Xander will say something or something will happen where I'm just like, oh, damn it. It's like, I don't want to think about that. Let me enjoy the show.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
It's really hard.
Boy. But this episode, you know, there was something you said earlier when we were talking about Buffy, and, you know, as a hero, we don't see heroes with that much, you know, kind of softness and compassion and vulnerability. And that really just makes me amped to get to Faith and her introduction. And, you know, we see Buffy as, you know, she's soft but strong, and her connections to people are what can give her strength sometimes and, you know, keeps her going. Whereas Faith is like the complete opposite, where she portrays that she sees love and feelings and connections as a weakness and something that holds you back and can get you killed when it comes to slaying. And, you know, this whole season kind of sets up season 3 and those dynamics perfectly. And that is one thing. Like, I do love the exploration of this hero who is feminine and soft and compassionate and not just like some badass chick in leather necessarily. But when you mentioned that, I was like, oh man, I can't wait till we get to see the juxtaposition of Faith and Buffy. Like, that's one of the best story arcs.
I love Faith. She's such a great character. You know, she's this shadow version of Buffy. You know, she's who Buffy could have been if her life had gone a little differently. And this season is about Buffy realizing that she really only can ever truly rely on herself, right? Everybody has secrets and weaknesses and things that might get in the way of them being there for you, but yourself, you always have to come back to relying on yourself. And then in season 3, she's challenged, like, what if yourself is evil or messed up? And she gets this chance to, like, sort of metaphorically battle her inner demons. It's such a fun season. I love season 3.
Pretty clever.
Which reminds me, we've decided we're going to cover all of season 3. We're not going to skip any of season 3. So listeners out there, if you're looking forward to season 3, you know, brace yourself. It's going to be the full season.
It's like peak Buffy.
Yeah.
Almost. Like, it's just too good.
I think it's my favorite season of all the seasons.
Yeah, I think that's true, especially because it's still them in high school, and I love the high school dynamic. It's the last year that, you know, before they go off to college. It's the last full season with Angel, and it's just, it's so good. And I do love, too, the, you know, talking about skipping the next 3 episodes and going straight to Becoming, but that floppy disk coming back, and the fact that Willow happens to be some sort of computer genius really coming in handy. And it always makes me wonder if how intentional that was, since Ginny Calendar was she, the computer science teacher?
Yeah,
essentially like a computer lab teacher. And then Willow's knowledge and being able to essentially use a floppy disk to defeat Angel because he has no idea what it is or how it works. Anything like that. Like, it comes in handy.
Yeah, it does.
Ugh. But let's see. Oh, the one other thing that this episode also makes me think of, every time when we see them get the news about Ginny Calendar, and Buffy kind of, her reaction is to kind of freeze.
Yeah.
And slide down the wall, where Willow's is more emotional. And then in, is it season 4 or 5 with the body?
Oh, season 5.
Joyce. Yeah, that episode, like, that's a hard one to get through. But every time I see this one and that little slice of grief and performance that Sarah Michelle Gellar gives, it just makes me fast forward to the body. And I don't know if I'm ready for that one. Good thing we have time.
We have time to brace ourselves because that is going to be an emotional one to watch.
Yep. I might cry thinking about it. Good Lord.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is that Honest Trailers just put out a Buffy version of Honest Trailers, and several people sent it to me, and I watched it, and it's really funny because most of what he says about Buffy is true. But his reaction to it is so weird. He'll be like, before this, shows didn't try to do good musical episodes, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing. Like the things he's complaining about are, I'm like, no, but those are things I love. Like you're saying it like it's a bad thing. It's, I don't know. I mean, look it up. It's on YouTube. Parts of it are funny. A lot of what he complains about is that Buffy sort of opened the door for some other shows that he doesn't like Vampire Diaries and stuff. It's like, well, that's true of every groundbreaking show, is that it's going to spawn some stuff you like and some stuff you don't. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I watch it. It's funny. Nothing that he says is not true. It's just that I'm like, and that's not bad, and that's not bad either.
Why is this a bad thing?
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Vampire Diaries, because I don't know. I don't love vampire storylines for the most part. I love Buffy, but it was on HBO. I had never seen it because I think I was a little old for when it came out on the CW.
Oh, you're thinking of Oh, yeah. Okay.
Nope. Vampire Diaries.
Vampire
Diaries.
So
I don't know I don't know why the CW shows are on HBO Max, but I finally
Warner
watched
Brothers.
It.
Yeah.
That's it. And it was not bad. Like
the first few seasons are not bad. It's pretty entertaining. I
got tired of it eventually, but
it gets like into this ridiculous place where they've all dated each other and then they have to like start dating each other again, and
there's too much of that.
It went on for too long, but the first few seasons I thought were really entertaining and fresh.
Yeah. I felt like kind of silly watching it at first, and then I was like, all right, fine. I'll keep going.
Yeah.
I just need some, like True Blood I also liked, but it's hard to match Buffy. I'm going to compare anything with vampires to Buffy.
Yeah. Me too.
Oh, well.
All right, that's the complete end of our show. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, I'm Penny.
And I'm Kara.
Keep slaying.
Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Tired of wasting time and money on starvation diets that lead to more frustration and stress? If there was a weight loss solution that could actually work for you, would you try it? Then head to Golo.com.
I'm Steve. I lost 138 pounds in 9 months on Golo.
I'm Amber. I've lost 128 pounds with Golo Taking Release.
If you're ready to take back control of your life, head to Golo.com now and see how Golo can work for you. That's GOLO.com.
My sleep is way better. My inflammation has gone way down. Golo saved my life. I was way overweight. That's what sent me down the path. I wanted to make sure and live for my kid.
I have literally tried everything. I was on the verge of getting gastric bypass surgery, and I saw the Golo commercial, and it was the last thing I tried because it worked.
Join over 2 million people who have found a better way to lose weight with Golo. Your healthier and happier life begins at Golo.com. That's GOLO.com. Again, GOLO.com.